Katherine Brown stood by the big window in her office in Midtown Manhattan, looking out at the busy streets below. Tall buildings surrounded her, and cars and people moved like tiny dots far beneath her.
Katherine was a real estate lawyer,
and she was known by everyone as a perfectionist. Around her, neat piles of papers sat on her desk, each one showing how careful and organized she always was. Just then,
there was a soft knock on her door.
Jennifer, her kind and reliable secretary, walked in with a smile. "Cathy, I've got all the materials ready for tomorrow's meeting," Jennifer said, holding a thick folder in her hands. Katherine turned around and smiled warmly at her. "Thank you, Jenny, I'm just about done for today. We have an early start tomorrow, so I'm wrapping things up." Katherine sat back down and checked her last few emails. As she did,
her cell phone started ringing.
She looked at the screen, and her face lit up when she saw who it was. "Mike, what's up?" Katherine answered happily. "Hey Cathy, are you still at the office?" came Michael Wilson's cheerful voice. "Yeah, just about to leave." "Why?" "No big reason, I just wanted to see you. Can I stop by on my way home?" Katherine laughed softly. "Of course, but you better hurry, I might beat you home."
After she hung up,
she began packing her documents carefully into her bag. As she moved around the office, she thought about how she had met Michael 5 years ago at a dinner party thrown by some friends. Michael was an entrepreneur, he had started 3 tech companies, and he was the opposite of Katherine in many ways. He was laid back, casual, and loved taking risks, while Katherine always liked everything to be just right. As Katherine zipped up her bag, Jennifer called out from the door. "Tomorrow's your final dress fitting, right? Nervous?" Katherine smiled, feeling a little flutter in her chest. A little.
But more excited than anything.
The wedding was just 2 weeks away, and everything was perfectly planned, just the way Katherine liked it. She had checked every detail over and over to make sure it would all go smoothly. Michael, on the other hand, didn't seem very interested in all the planning. He just smiled and said, "Whatever you decide is fine with me." Later, when Katherine arrived at her apartment, she stepped out of the elevator, and there was Michael, waiting for her with a big grin. He pulled her into a hug and kissed her on the cheek. "How was your day?" Katherine asked as they walked together. Michael shrugged and laughed. "Same old thing, meeting after meeting. Oh, and I signed a new contract today." "Did you read it carefully?" Katherine asked, raising an eyebrow. Michael laughed again. "Not really, you know me, I just go with my gut." Katherine sighed, half annoyed but mostly amused. "One day you're going to get into trouble if you don't pay attention to what you sign." Michael waved it off with a grin. "It's fine, I have good instincts. Anyway, what's for dinner?" They went into the kitchen together and started cooking. While they chopped vegetables, Katherine's phone rang again. When she saw her sister Elizabeth's name, she hesitated.
A familiar feeling of worry tugged at her.
She answered the phone. "Hey, Liz, what's going on?"
Elizabeth's voice was breathless and rushed.
"Like always. Hey, sis, I might be a little late for the dress fitting tomorrow. Work's running over." Katherine closed her eyes for a second, taking a deep breath. Elizabeth had always been like this, carefree, disorganized, and always showing up late. Their parents had loved Elizabeth's fun personality and often gave her special attention, leaving Katherine to feel like the responsible one. "Liz, tomorrow is really important. Please try not to be late." I know, I'll get there as soon as I can," Elizabeth said, sounding distracted. Michael waved at the phone and called out loudly. "Hey, Liz." Katherine smiled a little despite herself and told Elizabeth that Michael was there with her. After the call ended, she sat there for a moment feeling a little empty. She loved her sister, but sometimes Elizabeth's careless attitude hurt her more than she liked to admit. Michael saw the look on her face and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry about Liz," he said gently, "she's just her own person." Katherine looked at Michael and felt a rush of gratitude.
His easygoing,
forgiving nature was one of the many reasons she had fallen in love with him. A few days later, Katherine visited her parents at their beautiful home in Connecticut. The house was big and elegant, filled with expensive furniture and sparkling clean windows. They had retired early thanks to good investments, and now they spent their days hosting garden parties and playing golf. As they sat in the sun-filled living room drinking tea, Katherine's mother Diane smiled warmly. "Cathy, you picked such a lovely color for the dress," she said, pouring tea into a fine china cup, although it might be a little too flashy for Elizabeth. Katherine bit her lip, feeling that familiar sting. Mom, it's the bridesmaid dress. I chose it for her. Oh.
That's right.
Diane said lightly, as if it didn't matter much. She stirred her tea calmly. How is Elizabeth, by the way? I haven't heard from her lately. Busy with work, Katherine said, keeping her voice even, but she's helping out with the wedding. Their father, Robert, glanced up from his newspaper. And Michael's parents, will they be at the wedding? Yes, Katherine said. I confirmed with them last week. They're coming. Michael's parents, Joseph and Martha Wilson, were very formal, traditional people from Boston. They were proud of their son's marriage to a lawyer, but Katherine always felt a little nervous around them, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Later that night, after returning to her quiet apartment,
Katherine sat on the couch with her laptop on her knees.
She opened a hidden folder, one that even Michael didn't know about. In it was the prenuptial agreement she had prepared herself. Being a lawyer, Katherine knew it was smart to be cautious. She had included a very special clause: if Michael didn't show up at the wedding, a big part of his business shares would automatically go to her. It wasn't that she expected him to do something like that, she trusted him, but still, it gave her a sense of peace, like carrying an umbrella on a sunny day, just in case. She remembered how easily Michael had signed it without reading the fine print.
Chuckling.
It's probably just standard stuff anyway. Katherine smiled to herself, closed the laptop, and got ready for bed, feeling the weight of the day slowly lifting off her shoulders. The wedding was coming soon, everything had to be perfect, and she was determined to make sure it would be. Katherine sat at her desk.
The phone still warm in her hand.
Joseph Wilson's voice echoed in her mind. We thought of you as a daughter. We are so sorry for what Michael has done. Martha and I are on your side, no matter what. Katherine smiled sadly. She appreciated their support, but it didn't take away the sting of betrayal. She glanced out her office window one last time before gathering her things. Tonight, she would fly to Hawaii. Tomorrow, everything would change. Meanwhile, things were moving quickly behind the scenes. At Michael's company,
The board members had called an emergency meeting.
soon, Michael's authority as CEO would be taken away. Katherine's plan was unfolding perfectly.
Back at her apartment,
Katherine packed her suitcase carefully, when she saw the box containing her wedding dress.
her heart squeezed painfully.
But she shook off the sadness. That dress was part of a life that no longer existed. Later that night, at John F. Kennedy International Airport, Katherine met up with her legal team. Joseph and Martha Wilson were already there too. When Martha saw Katherine, she hugged her tightly without saying a word. We will never forgive that boy, Martha whispered. You are our family now, Katherine. On the plane, Katherine sat by the window, watching the stars over the dark ocean. Alex, her lawyer and friend, sat beside her, going over the final steps of their plan. Once we land, we'll confirm where they are, Alex said, then we'll confront them when they least expect it. Katherine nodded. I want to break their little paradise. For the first time in days, Katherine closed her eyes and slept. In her dreams, she saw Michael, Elizabeth, and even her parents, each with shocked, frightened faces. By the time they arrived in Honolulu, the sun was already shining bright over the island. Joseph and Martha were waiting at the terminal, standing proud and strong. Are you ready? Joseph asked. Katherine simply nodded. They rode in a taxi toward the luxury resort where Michael, Elizabeth, and her parents were staying. The beautiful ocean views outside the window were a sharp contrast to the tension inside the car. Where are they now? Martha asked. On the resort's private beach, Alex answered after checking his phone. Perfect, Katherine said softly. People are careless when they're relaxed. They checked into 2 villas that Katherine had reserved under a fake name. Meet me in an hour, she told everyone. I have some final preparations to make. In her villa, Katherine changed into a navy blue business suit. It was her power outfit, the one she wore when she meant serious business.
Pulling her hair into a tight ponytail.
She looked at her reflection. Now it's showtime, she said with a small,
determined smile.
Meanwhile, on the resort's private beach, Michael was lounging under a big umbrella, sipping a cocktail. Elizabeth sat beside him.
Laughing happily. Katherine's parents,
Robert and Diane, sat nearby.
looking relaxed and pleased.
I've never felt so free, Michael said, raising his glass. I think we made the right choice. Elizabeth smiled. I feel a little bad for Cathy, but we love each other. She'll understand someday. Cathy always worked too hard, Diane said casually. She never knew how to have fun. She's tough, Robert added. She'll bounce back. They toasted each other and soaked in the Hawaiian sun, thinking they had escaped the consequences of their betrayal. Just then, a staff member approached Michael. Mr. Wilson, sorry to interrupt. Someone urgent is waiting for you at the lobby. Michael frowned. Business? Here? I don't know the details, sir, the staff replied politely. Michael sighed and stood up. I'll be back soon, he told the others.
Elizabeth started to rise too.
But Michael waved her off. Diane and Robert decided to come along since they were ready to get out of the sun anyway. They walked casually into the beautiful lobby, and then stopped dead in their tracks. Standing in the middle of the lobby was Katherine. She looked powerful and calm, dressed sharply in her suit. Beside her were her legal team, and Joseph and Martha Wilson. Michael's face went pale. Cathy, his voice shook. What are you doing here, Dad, Mom? Joseph stepped forward, his voice cold. We are ashamed of you, son. Elizabeth looked terrified. Robert and Diane froze,
not knowing what to say.
Catherine's voice was calm and cutting. How's your vacation? Michael swallowed hard. Cathy, what is going on? Katherine pulled out a stack of papers from her briefcase. Michael, you remember signing this? Michael squinted at the papers. That's the prenup, right? So what? Page 17, Katherine said sharply. Alex pointed to the page. Michael read it, and his face drained of color. This isn't real, he whispered. It's very real, Katherine said. You signed that if you abandoned me before the wedding, 40% of your business shares would become mine. Michael stuttered. But I didn't see that. You didn't read it,
Katherine said coolly.
You trusted me to handle it, remember? Elizabeth clutched Michael's arm. Sis, please, this is too much. Katherine turned her cold gaze to her sister. You stole my life, Elizabeth, and you want mercy? Then she faced her parents. And you, Mom, Dad, you thought you were managing my trust fund, didn't you? Robert's mouth opened in shock. We are. Katherine shook her head. 5 years ago, I had you sign paperwork transferring everything to me.
You didn't even realize it.
You were too proud to read it carefully. Silence fell over the lobby. The 4 betrayers stood there, stunned, realizing they had lost everything. Michael's voice cracked. Is this revenge? Catherine's eyes were steady. No, it's justice. Martha walked past Michael without a glance. You are no longer our son, she said. Katherine is our daughter now. Finally, Katherine handed Michael one last paper. This is your resignation, sign it. With trembling hands, Michael did as he was told. Katherine turned away without another word.
Joseph and Martha followed her.
Behind them, Michael, Elizabeth, Robert, and Diane stood frozen, their dream life shattered. A year later, the trees in Central Park turned brilliant shades of red and yellow. Katherine stood by the window of her new office in Brooklyn, looking out at the beautiful fall colors. She was now chairperson of Wilson Innovation, the company she had saved and rebuilt. Michael had lost everything. Rumors said he had started a tiny company, but nobody trusted him anymore. Elizabeth had been left behind, too, working in a small shop in Los Angeles, far from the luxury life she once loved. As for Robert and Diane, they had lost their wealthy lifestyle. Katherine only spoke to them when necessary. Katherine, the board members are ready, her secretary said. Thank you,
Katherine replied with a smile.
After the meeting, Martha invited her to dinner that weekend. Of course, Katherine said warmly, I wouldn't miss it. On her way back to her office, Katherine noticed a newspaper headline about Michael's struggles. She felt no sadness, only peace. She had survived. She had grown stronger. That night, Katherine returned to her new apartment. On the table was a bouquet of fresh flowers. The card read, Can't wait for dinner, David. David Morrison was a kind, steady man she had met 6 months ago. Slowly,
he was becoming a bigger part of her life.
As she got ready for dinner, Katherine looked at herself in the mirror. No sadness, no anger, only quiet strength. Before stepping out, she stood by her window, looking at the city lights one last time. Life had hurt her badly once. But she had turned the pain into power. She smiled, closed the door, and walked into her bright, new future.